Hello, my name is Jason and today I'm going to show you how to make bitterballen. It's one of my favorite Dutch recipes and I've traveled all over the world trying to find where they make them better than they do in Holland, and I have not had any success. So I live in San Diego and the only way I can get them is if I make them myself. Now bitterballen, it takes a long time to make, but the effort is well worthwhile and you can usually enjoy a few beers whilst making them. But anyway, so here we go. Let's get started. The first part of making bitterballen is to make a good stock, and in order to do so I've got a big onion which I've cut up, also peeled some carrots, some celery, 3 leeks. Now exact quantities aren't that important because all we're doing is flavoring the bouillon, but the most important part is the beef. And I generally like to use high quality meat, and usually once every so often the butcher has a really good deal and I freeze it until I want to make bitterballen. But the idea is that you want at least 300 or 400 grams of beef, as you'll see later on, and it's perfectly fine that it's frozen. So now that I've cut up the vegetables, I've got my carrots, my onions, my celery, my leeks, I've also got some bay leaves, about 5 or 6 small ones, and I've got my meat. I've got about 5 liters of water boiling right now, and I'm going to add all the beef. Now ideally this beef would have some kind of bone in it because the bone adds a lot of flavor. So I'm just going to add everything into here now. Also want to add some salt and some pepper, and I need to put a lid on it. So after about 2 hours the meat should be pretty good and cooked. So I take the meat out and I'll take the vegetables out. Everything is still very hot. What we'll do is we'll separate the bones because we don't need those any longer, and any good bits of meat. Once you've separated all the bones from the meat, we start cutting it. And notice how it tears off very easily with a fork. I'm still going to cut it because I want it into really small pieces, and it should look something like this when you're done. Just make sure all the pieces are as small as you can get them, and then that was the hardest part out of the way. Next I take 4 little shallots. Now you can also use onions, but I prefer to use shallots. You want to cut these as fine as you possibly can. So there we have about half a cup of shallots. So now we're ready to make the sauce, and I have half a cup of cream here, heavy cream. I've got 400 grams of beef, 50 grams of fresh cut cheddar cheese, 80 grams of minced onions, 60 grams of butter, and 60 grams of flour. So we start off with, get the pan going. Alright, let's get the onions going. So all we want to do now is brown the onions, soften them up. Alright, so now I lower the heat a little bit and I mix in all the flour. Just got to make sure all the flour gets absorbed. So now we take the beef stock that we made earlier, and I'm going to take about 1 ladle to begin with and mix this in. Just got to really mix this in well. We take another ladle of stock and we do the same. 1 more ladle, that should be enough then. So not too much, half a tablespoon of nutmeg. And now we're just about ready to add the meat. So just throw all the meat in here. There we go. We're just going to make sure that nicely. I'm going to add the cream. Now, not everybody adds cream. If you want the slightly healthier, you can also use milk. But I don't think Bitterballen are supposed to be healthy, so I like to do it the proper way. So we just mix this in nicely. Now, I add a generous amount of parsley. So, there we go. That's probably about 2 tablespoons, maybe a little bit more. And now is also a good time to add some salt and some pepper. Now this is the bit that most people wouldn't do, and I don't think it's necessary, but I kind of like it. I find that the cheese adds a nice rich flavor to it. So I sprinkle about 40 to 50 grams of cheddar. I've also used Gouda. You could probably use pepper jack cheese as well. And then we should be all done. Now I need to grab a tray. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to pour all of this right onto the tray. And this is so that when I put it in the fridge, that it cools evenly. And it also does it quicker so that I can get to the next step quicker. But this is going to harden in the fridge. Spread it out nicely. And then I'm going to put it in the fridge for about 1 hour. And then we'll be ready for the next step. Right, Scrabble? You want a Bitterball? Okay, after about 1 hour, the meat should be nice and hardened. Fun part. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take these into small bowls. I'm going to dip them into the flour. Here's a couple of eggs that I need to whisk up. And these are some panko Japanese style breadcrumbs. These are nice and thick. They'll help the Bitterballen crisp up. So this is the part that gets messy, but it's also the fun part. Gotta whisk up the eggs. Okay. So I want to make them roughly this size, maybe slightly bigger than that, just slightly smaller than a golf ball. That's the idea, and we're just going to roll it as nicely as we can, and then we dip it in flour, make sure it gets a good coating. That goes into the egg. Which you need a good coating so that the breadcrumbs stick to it. And then we have our first one ready. So we repeat. So now we're ready to fry the Bitterballen, and what we do is we'll probably do about 8 at a time. Get away from there. They're for me. And the idea is to get the oil as hot as you can get it. Actually, I'm using lard. Lard will get you, it's a little bit unhealthier, but it tastes a lot better. Let's put them in. And when they're ready, they're served hot with mustard and of course best enjoyed with some Dutch beer. Enjoy!